Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Anne, and in this video I'm going to talk to you about my experience with coming off of Sertraline, also known as Zoloft. And I'm going to tell you how I did it, what I experienced while I was doing it, and then give you an update on how I'm doing. I've been off completely for about 4 months now. So to start, I will give you a little bit of background. I was on this medication for 5 years at 100 milligrams, and I feel like it truly helped me out of a dark place that I don't know I would have been able to get out of otherwise. Just remember back to that time when I first went on it, how dark it was and how hard and scary it really was. I'm so thankful for this medication. I was kind of pushed into using it. I had been struggling on and off with depression for like probably 10 years before I started taking the medication. But after the birth of my first child, it was just exacerbated so much with the postpartum depression. It was horrible. And my doctor at the time just really kept emphasizing that she thought I should try it, and I'm so thankful because it really helped me. This medication for sure did its job for me and got me out of depression. I do feel like there's a lack of support when it comes to this drug. It seems like doctors are so quick to put people on it. It's so common for people to be on antidepressants, but at least in my experience, I didn't have any support once I was on it. I was prescribed it by the doctor who was seeing me when I was pregnant, and she delivered my baby, and then I saw her for a couple months after, and then I moved and I never saw her again. And after that, the doctors that I would see, it would just be a yearly checkup with whoever. I wasn't connected to any doctors. They didn't know me. They didn't know my backstory. So they would basically just ask me about the medication, is it helping? I would say yes, and then that was the end of the conversation. They would just continue prescribing it. It wasn't until I decided to come off on my own that I was doing some research online and saw that it's protocol, or it's recommended protocol with this medication, that doctors should be suggesting that you start weaning off, or at least try to after a year of taking it. It definitely didn't happen for me. I was on it for 5 years straight. Still wasn't suggested that I come off. It was all up to me. So the reason that I decided to try coming off was I was having a conversation with some friends where the question got brought up, what are your escapisms basically when you're having really hard emotions? What do you do to buffer them or stifle them or whatever? And it made me realize when we were talking about that I hadn't had a strong emotion for years. I literally couldn't remember the last time I had cried, the last time that I was overtaken by emotion. I remembered what that was like because I by nature have always been a very emotional person. And in my 20s, I feel it started in my late teens, and then for sure in my early 20s, it was super common for me to have just full on emotional attacks where I felt I just lost all control to the emotion. That was super common for me. And so when we were having this conversation and I was realizing that I hadn't had a strong emotion in years, it was just kind of really eye-opening to me. I felt I was in such a good place at the time. My life had been so stabilized in the last 5 years, and I had done a lot of work on myself mentally and emotionally. I had a really good support system, so I just felt all the pieces were in place, that when this question got brought up and I realized about the emotions, I really was just curious, I kind of want to try coming off and just see what life is like without this buffer of medication, and see what I'm capable of. And so I went into it with that mindset, that it was an experiment. And I think that was helpful because I wasn't emotionally invested in a certain outcome with coming off the medication. I think the pros to being able to live without the medication that I was like kind of driven to do was it's just like a maintenance thing. Like, it's kind of how I think about wearing like contacts. Like, it's totally fine and I'll be okay if I need to wear contacts for the rest of my life, but if it's possible that I could, like, you know, get the LASIK surgery and wake up with perfect eyesight and not have to worry about contacts, not have to worry about like packing them when I travel, like, that's kind of how I looked at the medication, where it's like it wasn't something that I had to get off of, but I wanted to give it a shot. I also was just kind of craving that emotion that I was lacking. I wanted to feel like butterflies and just the vibrations that you get from emotions. It makes you feel alive, and so I was just curious about experiencing those again. I did make an appointment to tell my doctor that I wanted to start weaning off. However, I was very cautious when I did this because I knew that the typical protocol that doctors use is really quick. They say that it's slow, but I've like looked at the weaning schedule, and I think to take someone from 100 milligrams to 0, slow is like 2 to 3 months. And I feel like that would be way too fast. I wanted to go super slow. I wanted to just like take as little off as possible because I really didn't want to experience the like brain zaps and tremendous fatigue and depression that comes along with lowering the dosages. I knew that that was to be expected. I knew that I was going to experience that, but I really wanted to minimize the intensity of it. I'll put my actual weaning schedule in the description because I feel like if I just start explaining it in detail, it's gonna get confusing. I'll confuse myself. But basically, yeah, I would like alternate days with the lower dosage and do that for like a month at a time. The experiences that I had once I started coming off would be like, as soon as my body registered that the dose was low, I did get fatigue and I would get like super irritable, and life would just be a lot harder and heavier it would usually last between like 2 to 5 days. I really didn't try to push myself in any other areas of my life at this time. The key to this, like what really helped me, was just reminding myself on those days that this was temporary and this was a side effect of coming off the medication. It didn't speak anything to my future and my overall health. I felt like as long as I kept reminding myself that it was temporary, that really helped. And I did get depressed. I felt depressed. I felt super fatigued. I felt like I wasn't excited about the things that normally excited me. I didn't have motivation to do basically anything for a couple days. But one thing I noticed that was different between that feeling and the feeling of depression that I had before I went on the medication is that I still had a sense of hope, which I think is like the ticket to curing depression or getting out of depression, is like if you're able to have hope. If you lose hope in life, that's a really, really hard place to be in. And yeah, I think just knowing that it was temporary really helped me like keep that hope alive and keep adding fuel to it. And then also knowing that if it didn't go away and it wasn't temporary, that I could always just go back on the medication. So I never felt like I was just fully alone or like fully stranded in my darkness. And that was really, really helpful. So yeah, so typically that would last for like between 2 and 5 days. And I just gave myself so much grace during that time. It was still hard, but I just really didn't push in any other areas of life. I went from 100 to 50 in about probably 5 or 6 months. Maybe about 5 months, and then I think I took another 2 months to get from 50 to 25. And it was like around August, I think, of 2023 when I was at 25 and started working down. And that's when I realized, I think coming from 25 down was when the heaviness that I was feeling really started to actually affect my life in like a substantial way. Whereas before that, like I said, it would just last a couple days and I felt like I was adapting really well and able to still maintain most things in life outside of those couple days. When I got to the 25 was when I realized that, or when I noticed that it was starting to affect my personality and affect how I was showing up in the world every day. I was in a couple of groups that were meeting once a week, and I just noticed that I would show up differently than normal to those. Like, I just really didn't want to share myself. I felt no desire to open up or to express myself. I think that's also the time when I stopped filming YouTube videos, and it's probably for the same reason. Like, I just really felt like it was so important for me to just be alone with myself. Like, I think of it like I was entering into a cocoon, and I could feel it. It's so cool to think, like, now that I'm on the outside of it, to get a different perspective. I really felt like I was like in a cocoon and like transforming. And so I was just kind of like, I built up this protective layer where I just didn't want any outside influence on what was happening internally. I could literally feel myself changing. And yeah, I just wanted to give myself all the time and space required to do that full transformation that I felt happening. And it's so cool. I don't give all the credit to myself. I do think there's something bigger that was changing me at this time, and I was just experiencing it for what it was. This time was hard. It felt like a heaviness. It felt like heaviness, I feel like, is the best word to describe how I felt. Like, it just, everything felt harder. It felt harder to do the activities that I normally would do. I felt like I didn't have any motivation to engage in the external world, and I have a family with young kids, so it's really important that I continue engaging, and so I had to keep pushing myself to do those things. All of my energy went to my family at this time, and after that I just didn't have anything left to give. Like, I had to muster up so much energy just to continue supporting my family and doing, giving them the love and energy that they deserve and need from their mom. But outside of that, I was just so fatigued. I felt like I just had nothing else to give the world. I went from 25 down to 12, started alternating the 12s, and I just felt so bad during this period. This was about a month, I think in October, that I was alternating the 12s. So I would take 12 one day, not take it the next day. And I felt horrible. And it wasn't like the couple day period that I had been used to previously when I would reduce the medication. It was just continuing. Like, I wasn't feeling any better. So at this point, I made an appointment with my doctor and told her that I wanted to get on the liquid version of the medication, so that, because I had read online that you can do that, and then when you're on liquid you can reduce it from 12 to 0 very gradually. She basically like looked at me like I was a psycho. She, like, I still remember this appointment. I feel like I was at a very vulnerable place when I made this appointment, and I'm such a stubborn person too. I get in my head on like, here's how it needs to be. This is the best course of action, and I'm just gonna go like out into the world just to basically get the resources I need to fulfill this plan that I've created. It wasn't open for debate. I wasn't looking for like any advice when I saw her. I literally just saw her so that she could prescribe me what I wanted, and she wouldn't. She told me that my idea didn't make any sense, that if I was already at 12, that was well below the prescription amount that actually even makes a difference for people in the studies. So she said since I'm already at 12, that I basically didn't need to be on the medication at all. So if I wanted to go lower, that I should just rip the Band-Aid off. And I was really upset in this appointment. It was really hard for me, but afterwards I was driving home and I cooled off and I thought about it, and I just decided to trust her and take a leap. Like, this whole thing was an experiment anyway. So I continued that mindset where I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna rip the Band-Aid off and experience whatever comes up for me, and worst case scenario, I can just go back up to the 12 or the 25 if needed. So this was in November that I came off completely. So the hardest time for me was that period right after I came off the medication completely. So December and most of January was really hard. I was going through a lot of, I just felt really fatigued. I felt like a super heavy weight on me all the time. So everything was just harder. I felt fatigued. I didn't have any like motivation for anything really in life, which is such a hard place to be in, especially for someone like me who's always been super ambitious and always working towards a goal. To not have any motivation and just feel tired all the time was really hard. I was also super irritable at this time, and this lasted me like the entire month of December and pretty much into January too. But something really amazing that came out of this period was that because it was in December and January, it aligned with the holidays, and my family and I had committed to going out and visiting our extended family on both sides months and months and months prior to this. So we were already committed to this, and typically I'm a huge people pleaser. I'm never usually comfortable in social situations. Like, the main thing I'm doing is masking usually. Just completely like disassociating from my internal feelings and emotions and thoughts. Usually more like most of my energy is going towards masking and just making sure that there's like overall harmony with the people that I'm with. So yeah, that can be a lot. And this period I just had no extra energy. I literally could not mask at this time. It was all that I could do to get out of bed and like take care of my family and show up to things, that I was basically forced into a place of not people pleasing. And it's such a gift. It truly was such a gift to have these experiences where I would just show up, and I'm always kind and I always give love. So it's not that I was showing up and being rude, but I was showing up and not overly exerting myself, not making myself uncomfortable. What do I need in this moment to feel good? Most of the time it's to sit by myself and observe. Just make comments that come up instead of like overanalyzing them and trying to adapt them to like not offend anyone, just saying them as they are, and realizing that like it was so enjoyable to be this way. It gave me energy being in a social situation when I was this way. I've never had that experience before. Typically when I'm in a social setting, it's fun, but I don't gain energy. I'm usually like depleting my energy, and then I have to go recharge for a while, which still did happen. But my gosh, like, just experiencing that, I feel like I'm being so dramatic about it, but truly, like, that was eye-opening for me. So I am thankful that I had that experience. It still sucked feeling fatigued, and like, I'm so grateful that I am past that hump. But yeah, I'm also grateful that I was able to open my eyes and like experience a different perspective. So yeah, I've been off for about 4 months now, and yeah, I feel like I'm truly recovering. I really feel like I'm getting my energy back up to the levels that it was at when I was at the 100, like just not being fatigued, not being irritable, not feeling heaviness. I feel like zest for life again and motivation. I'm setting goals again, and I can see from a much clearer perspective. So I hope that gives anyone hope out there who's maybe in the depths of it and feels like it's gonna last forever. Obviously, like, don't take what I'm saying as like the end all be all, but definitely just know that at least there's one person out there who was able to fully recover, even after being on it for 5 years, being fully dependent on it. Yeah, it took a year, but I wouldn't do it any other way. A couple keys that were the most helpful for me in being successful and coming off. One was being fully mentally prepared. So to me, that meant like realizing that it's not going to be easy and that there will be days where you're depressed, and being fully prepared for that. That was the most important key to this. Secondly, being like going into it as an experiment and being totally fine with if I needed to go back on the medication, going back on it, but just leaving that door open to like experience what life is like without it, is key. And then the third key is just going so slow, like super slow. If you start to feel really overwhelmed and it's lasting long, or it's getting like where you can't hold up your life, then maybe going back up to the last dose that you were on and just taking longer, because really there's no rush to get off. Slow and steady. And yeah, I feel like at this point I'm fully recovered for the most part. I experience irritability, fatigue, and kind of a depression feeling for 2 days out of the month right before my period. That's totally normal though, just being a female. That's very normal. It doesn't hinder my life. It's just a couple days where it kind of sucks. Like, I don't have the motivation to keep pursuing the goals that I'm working towards, which can be hard. But yeah, life doesn't need to be perfect. I don't need every day to be 100%. And I'm really happy with where I'm at right now. I think that I'm completely independent of that medication now. I'm giving myself a full year off to give my brain a chance to fully recover, and then I'll assess it. So next November, December, I'll assess where I'm at and if I want to go back on or not. But I would say as of today, I would predict that my answer will be no. Yeah, I think that it's fully possible to recover from this medication. If you have any questions about anything, feel free to leave a comment. I appreciate if you took the time to watch this video. I hope it was helpful, and hopefully I will see you in the next video.